Hi guys, it's Dawn from Dawn, Ohio Sunny Gardener, and I am here today. I wanted to talk to you about some of the things that I did in my 22 garden that was either a success or a fail. So some of my tips today are going to be for 2023. And what I did is I made a list at the end of 2022 and wrote down what I either could do better on or not to do or do it this way. So I am going to go over that today. If you are new here, my name is Dawn and I live on almost a 1 acre of property. I have a 1,000 square foot garden. So if you are new here and you like the content, please like and subscribe. So let's get into my tips for 2023. So first, last year I did a lot of my starts together. Even some of the things that I could direct sow, I wanted to see what I could do with growing them from seed. I will not do that this year. The only reason I won't do that this year is because it was so overwhelming. Canning and preserving for 1 year's worth of food and trying to keep track of all of the seeds that I started last year was just really overwhelming. So what I'm gonna do this year, I have started my onions separate. I have started some of my cold brassicas for the ones that for cooler temperature. But when next week I am starting just peppers and tomatoes. Those are my two prime vegetables that I need the most of, I should say. So those I will be starting next week, and I'm just starting those. Don't plant melons or squash or pickles together. Last year, I think I said this in my last video, last year I put some melons together. They cross-pollinated, and I had some that were obviously some Tigger melons and some canary melons and watermelons with cantaloupe melons and those kind of things. So I am going to separate my melons this year. I'll do in each 4 corners, I think, of my garden this year. I've got my plan started on paper, but I haven't finished. And my melons are gonna be one of the ones that are spread out in the garden, so that doesn't happen this year. Last year, another tip, I planted my determinate tomatoes closer than I should have. I feel like they had a lot of still the airflow, but as far as like the ones being in the middle of the bed, I didn't give them enough space to get a lot of sun. At the end of the season, that wasn't a bad thing, because I ended up using a lot of the green tomatoes that did not turn for sliced green tomatoes to can for fried green tomatoes in the winter. So it wasn't a total fail, but I did learn from that. I did not get as big of a yield from my Rios as I did the year before due to compacting more into one raised bed. Oh, this one, I don't know if I can improve this one this year, but I am going to try. This is going to be one that I'm going to try the most at. Is I need to mow weekly, and I need to weed. They took over some of my non-bedding, some of my non-raised bed areas, and it was crazy. So weed. So strawberries, last year I had a big patch. I started a new one last year. They both did really well. They gave me strawberries, but I did prune them. But when I did prune them, they started growing and taking off, and I only had limited space. So this year I do have to make my strawberry beds bigger, and I probably would have got a bigger yield. So that is something I'm going to do this year. My one I have already done. It said to start my brassicas together in seed, and that's what I'm doing behind us. My brassicas, I have cabbage back there, I have broccoli and cauliflower. So what's our next tip? Don't pre-start melons, beans, squash, and pumpkins. That's what I was just talking about, starting lots and lots and lots of seeds. Some of the things that I did, especially the melons and the pumpkins and those kind of things, those are vining, and if you plant them too early from seed, then you'll have to up pot them. And I had already had a lot of vegetables like my peppers and my tomatoes that I needed to pot up. So I this year am going to start all of those from seed. I'm not even going to worry about trying to take care of them in the greenhouse. This tip goes right along with the weeding and the mowing. I'm going to try to contact a mulcher or someone who cuts down trees. I do have one in mind that cut down my in-laws' trees, and they said just to get a hold of them. So as soon as the weather breaks, I'm going to get a hold of them. But mulching and laying things down where weeds would grow is going to prevent a lot of that, and that'll give me ample time to spend with the garden excuse me, instead of having to weed so much. This one's a big one. Indeterminate tomatoes. They are glorious, they are pretty, they are extravagant, so they just make you want to grow them, just for the fascination of the indeterminate amount of tomatoes that you would get. The care for them is a little bit more intense than the determinate tomatoes, so I have to remember to slow down and not grow as many indeterminate tomatoes this year. I do have 2, 4, 6, I think maybe 8 behind me that were some early seed that I already planted, but I probably am only going to do 2 more varieties, and that's it. I don't want to focus too much on the indeterminate tomatoes and then lose focus on my year's worth of preservation, because this year I think we all are really going to need it. So no, no, no on the indeterminate tomatoes. Last year I did probably 5 different varieties of peppers. I did not get a good yield or production from any of them. So that is another thing I'm going to focus on this year, is growing more plants. I'm not sure why I didn't get as much. I don't know if I didn't feed them enough, water them enough. They didn't really turn color. They stayed green. They looked healthy. I just wasn't getting the production. So I think I already did my count for my peppers. I've got it set up, and I think I'm doing like, I want to say 42 plants. But I want to make sure that I'm getting enough peppers, because I use peppers for a lot of things, for most of my canning and preserving. But then I also want to do a good amount of stuffed peppers for the freezer for the winter. So I will definitely be doing more peppers. Another tip is I need to plant more potatoes. I'm not a pro by any means at planting potatoes, but I do have a big area in the garden that I am going to keep just for potatoes, and potentially another area that I'm going to do those in. Potatoes are a vegetable that you could do so many things with, and I don't want to miss out this year on getting more potatoes. Planting onions. So planting onions in beds. I did not plant them in beds last year. I let the weeds overgrow where the onions were. It overtook them. I planted over 500 onion plants last year, and I think I got 10. So shame on me. This year I am putting my onions in beds, and behind us I have over 600 onions started. So hopefully this year is my year for onions. Another tip is not putting beans in a bed that you could be turning more plants in. Like, what I mean, beans have a short maturity life, 55-day for most varieties, and you can do 3 concession sowing of beans in different spots, as to where if you took up one whole bed just for beans, you could do beans in one, and then when that crop was done, you could put something else in there and then take them to another spot, and even wait a couple weeks for something else to get done. So that's another tip, is just keep moving vegetables around in your garden to get your biggest production out of each vegetable. Another tip, lettuce in a bed, a raised bed or pots, for me anyways. Same thing with the onions. I did not put them in a raised bed. I direct sowed them in the soil in the garden, and the weeds overtook. Couldn't tell which ones were the microgreens or which ones were weeds. We talked about brassicas a little bit, but another tip for brassicas is plant them at different times as well to get the most out of your vegetables. I last year grew all of them at the beginning of the year, and it took up so much space where I could be doing other things, and your brassicas come up all at once. So if you plant them all at once and you don't concession sow them in different places to give you the most production of your garden, like your broccoli, cauliflower, and cabbage, your kohlrabi, whatever it is, and you put them all in one spot, you've got that whole, and then you have heads and heads. If you're not preserving, like if you're making coleslaw or doing those types of things, then yes, make sure that you are doing them at one time, because you want them all to produce at the same. But if you concession sow and you're eating them for fresh eating throughout the summer, make sure that you're only doing 4 to 6 heads at a time, and then doing something else. So that way you're not wasting a bed where there's other things at that you can't put them in. So guys, those are my tips from my garden last year. You may have others, you may have different ones, you may have different goals this year, but my tip to you is, at the end of each season, make sure that you're writing what your successes are in the garden and what your struggles, what your failures. So this way, at the beginning of your season, you have got something to go by and be like, oh, because I would never remember all of these things on this list whatsoever. So thanks guys for watching. Happy gardening. Like and subscribe. Bye-bye.